I'm Kim Dennis.
And I'm Brittany Kraft.
And we did ours on organizing myself. And our rationale is basically students in middle school can't really tell when they can't identify and self-correct their poor and unproductive organization habits. So we as teachers need to make sure they're staying on task and they are recognizing when they're being unorganized, and they need to recognize their organization skills and stay on a high school and college track. And learning organization skills makes students more productive and proud and pleased with themselves. And when they're taught organization skills at an earlier age, they're more willing to adopt the ideas. And they need to understand the importance of a prepared, planned, and thorough lifestyle, and understand how it can make them a more successful student. Ready to do notes is our first lesson. Okay, and the student focusing activities, the teacher will give students a scenario about a girl named Trisha and who did not use to-do notes, and the students are basically it's gonna show them that if you don't use to-do notes, they could miss out on important information. And then the procedure, the teacher will have the students get together in groups and they will brainstorm ideas, and the teacher will have the class come back and then give them a chance to discuss their thoughts, and they'll write them on the board, and then the teacher will discuss the importance of to-do notes by questioning, and then the teacher will have the students write to-do notes where they think they should while she reads an announcement. So the announcement, she'll basically just say, an example will be like, she'll give, first I want to let you know the English test is going to be moved from April 12th to April 15th, and so the students are going to have to listen up and then write down, and then she'll have random things that really aren't too important, but they're going to have to make sure they're writing down the things that aren't.
Then our second lesson is keeping a planner. Most schools give the kids a little planner to work with, and not a whole lot of students actually use it. So at first we would have them, the focusing activity would be a cartoon of a planner type thing that I found. And then we would give them a school week's worth, so a Monday through Friday calendar for activities, and then there's activities at the bottom of it. We'll actually be doing this lesson here in a little bit. So you would actually fill in the calendar of everything you have to do that week, and then we would come back together and talk about how you can color code it. So anything to do with schooling, you can make, let's say, yellow, and then extracurriculars, you can make red, and things like that, whatever your favorite color is, however it works for you. And then brainstorm other techniques to make the planner work best. And then we would, after doing that activity, we would look into the school-provided planner and say, okay, how can we make this work in this planner? And I also had that back in the day, wrote down every subject and every day, and then if I didn't have homework in that subject, write none. So you could always teach that to them as well. And then just afterwards, I would have them fill out a date of their planner the next day, and then they'd have to bring it into class.
The next one we do is organizing a workspace at home. The teacher would be discussing the students' current workspaces, and the students to basically discuss, okay, so how are you doing your homework at home right now? What is your workspace? Do you have a desk? Are you sitting on the couch? What does it look like? And then she kind of have students basically just, talk about it, and you write it on the board, write it on the chalkboard, and just say, how is it? Is it organized? What do you think? And then the teacher will have the students identify, she'll pass out paper, it's a template that I have, and then identify the supplies that you should have, and do you have it right now? How do you plan on getting it? And they kind of quickly figure that out. And then the teacher would put the students into groups and have them design the ideal workspaces once they figured out the supplies that are necessary to have a prepared, planned out, organized workspace. Then this teacher would have them pass out poster boards, and then they would design with their groups the ideal workspace that would make them successful. And then the teacher would wrap up the lesson, and then they would present the poster boards after they were finished, and then she would discuss, do you think that it is important to stay organized at your house when you're doing homework and studying? And then the students would go on and talk about their...
Then, since you take your book bag home generally, we would have them organizing a book bag. And I had the idea, teacher would come in, you would have a bag that's all unorganized and you're looking for the day's lesson, for a worksheet that a student's asking for, something like that. And you're just ruffling through it and throwing all these papers everywhere as the focusing activity. And then you would have piles of pens, pencils, papers from each class, folders, and then a pencil case, so that you would group up the students and they would work on putting all those papers into different folders. So you would make sure your social studies papers are in all together in one folder, math, etc. And then we would come back together and decide how they put them into folders and figure out how you could organize your book bags.
Be following a rubric. The teacher would have the students fill out a rubric survey, and the rubric survey would basically just be questions saying, just simple questions like, have you ever downloaded music before? Have you ever installed a computer? Have you ever helped your parents work on a road map? So just simple questions like that, and you're probably thinking, why would that be helpful with a survey? I mean, with a rubric. And it's basically saying, if you can fill out yes to any of these questions, then you can follow simple directions, in which a rubric is directions how to do a project. And the teacher would discuss with students will discuss what students know about rubrics. And they say, do you think rubrics are fair? And questions like that. And if they've had bad experience with rubrics and things about that. And then they'd have them get into groups, and the teacher would pass out a paper of the rules of rubrics, and they'd have the students read those out loud and then discuss what they thought about those. And then the teacher would pass out a rubric along with a project. It would be just kind of a big project with a student, and the student would not be following the directions along with that rubric, and it would be scored. And then the students would get into groups, and then they'd figure out, do you think it was fair that score with that rubric along with that project? And then the students would write and discuss why the student did not get why they thought it was fair the student did not get the grade for that project along with the rubric. And then they would close along with the discussion. And then they would talk about what were some of the mistakes Jamal made on the project.
So then we would talk about setting goals and combating goal busters. So we would start out talking about SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So we would go into exactly what makes a goal, each of these categories, and we would go over a few example goals. There would be slips that different individuals, different students would be given, and it'd be a reason as to why, such as an example goal, I want to get an A on this test on Friday. So all the kids would have a reason as to why that goal is specific or timely. And as they're sitting there, I would say that goal, and then they would say, oh, I have a reason for why it's timely, and they would bring it up to the board. So then we would talk about SMART goals, and then we would go into goal busters. We would first give a definition of what a goal buster is, which is basically any temptation that keeps you from getting your goal done, video games, Facebook, etc. So I would also, we would have balloons at the front of the room, and the neighboring teachers might not like this idea very much, but I really enjoy it. And you would have different goal buster ideas inside those balloons, and you could have students individually come up and pop a balloon and then read off what that goal buster was. And then discuss as a group, how can you avoid that? And just one brainstorming idea I came up with was, you get your homework done for this subject, and then you can go on the internet for 10 minutes, and then you have to go back to your homework. So it's a little reward in the middle of
In terms of group projects, everyone knows group projects can be kind of a pain sometimes. So the teacher would start out by asking about prior experiences of group projects they've had, and then the teacher would have a scenario and have some students come up and act out a prior scenario they've had, and she would have the scenario already out, which is the template I have here, and she'd have it passed out with the students. And then after that's done, she'd have discussed with students what they found and if they asked if they've seen it before. And then the teacher would have the children get into groups of 4 and introduce a group project organizer. And then she'd have them look at the organizer and say, how do you think this would help in your group? What do you see in the organizer that might help contribute and make your group better when you have a project of your own? And then they would discuss for a while and then come back as a group. And then she would, in the closing, she would discuss for a while, but then for the assessment, you'd pass out a writing assessment, and then they would write a paragraph on each thing and how it could help.
We then have organizing computer files. As we know, computers and technology are getting even more used every day. So I have an example. I would have an example on the classroom computer, hopefully hooked up to a projector, and then students would be able to tell the teacher what folders that are needed to be made for those files, and then actually physically move those files into the folders, just to keep the desktop and everything organized. And then, provided the school has laptops that you could rent somehow, rent the laptops and have a document of files that needs to be organized, and then the students would actually make the folders and then write up what folders they made and what files they put in those folders. If there isn't a chance for those laptops, you would do the same thing, just they would be given a piece of paper with all these different files on it, and then they would have to write up what folders they make and what files they put in those folders and why they did that. So you could do it either way, with laptops or without. It's just the actual experience on the computer.
Another one that was study buds. Well, first, the teacher would display a cartoon of a student on the overhead so everyone can see, and it would show a student who was having trouble, and he was like, oh my god, I forgot my homework assignment, I don't know what it is. And then a study bud came up, and he was just like, oh my god, this is so helpful. And then, so it would just show students that's helpful to have a study buddy, and then the teacher would have the students get together, and they would just basically have a skit, and they perform, first they get the rules of study buds, and they go over that, read them aloud, and then act out skits and to show they know the rules of study buds and why they are helpful. And then basically that's the assessment, showing out that they know the rules and understand them and how it's helpful.
And then we have becoming involved in the community. So we would show examples of being active in community service and other events, showing them pictures and things like that, and then also sharing different organizations in the local community that the students could get involved in. And then dividing the class up, not on necessarily their actual views, but making them number off and having one in favor of getting involved in the community and one group not in favor of getting involved in the community as students. And then having a miniature debate. They would get about 15 minutes each group to work together and come up with their arguments, and then have a little miniature debate and then talk at the end. And hopefully the outcome would be that it's good to get involved in the community. If not, you could always twist it somehow to make sure that the students know that it is important to get involved in the community. And then afterwards, their assessment for this one, I think it would be really great if they wrote a reflection paper about what getting involved in the community means to them, and if they ever have. The lesson is keeping a planner. So, so what you have in front of you is a weekly, Monday through Friday, what would be like a planner. And so an example of how I just did one day on here, but I'm going to ask you to do all 5 days. At the bottom it has, you have daily chores at home, you have an extracurricular activity, you have practice in at least one game or match of any kind, so you get to choose what extracurricular activity you're involved in. So you, it'll depend if it's a game or a match. And then you'll have 1.5 hours of homework a day, approximately, to schedule in there as well. And you have 3 things that you know for sure you have this week. You have a math test on Wednesday, you have a reading assignment due Friday, and then vocabulary awards with definitions are due on Tuesday. So you want to go ahead and fill out your whole week, and we'll be walking around to kind of help you out with that, and then we'll talk about it.
model here. You need to see, and if you want to write in different colors, it might help you out. So you can write in your chores in different colors, and your homework assignments in a different color. That's always helpful to keep you organized so you know exactly what you should be doing.
We have markers if you want to highlight them after you write it, or else we have colored pencils that you can actually physically write it in different colors or color around it. Then we would go into, we would have them take out their school planners. We don't have those, so that's why we just did this part of the